right at 5 o'clock. I'd like to reconvene to open session. Welcome, everybody. A few of you that are here, we do have a small crowd compared to last month. The board did meet in closed session today, and we voted on 2 items. The first item is to be moved by Board Member Noonan, seconded by Board Member Zumwalt, and the board voted unanimously in favor of adopting the charging document supporting the dismissal and suspension without pay for a district faculty member. Second item related to the same issue was moved by Board Member Sherman, seconded by Board Member Zumwalt, and the board authorized the superintendent or his designee to take all appropriate actions consistent with the law to carry out the recommended actions which are in the best interest of the district. With that, Fidel, will you lead us in the pledge of our
Ready? Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, for board policy 2350, any person may address the board at this time, either on an agenda item or other matters of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker with a maximum time of 15 minutes per item, unless otherwise extended by the board. Do we have any public comments concerning items on the agenda? Seeing none, any public comments concerning items not on the agenda? Okay, thank you. We will move on to our board and executive staff reports. And first up is Mr. Haskell on our student custody report.
Hello, how's everybody doing today? I just have a few things to go over. Just to give you guys some dates, we have Constitution Day coming up on the 17th of September. That is something schools across, across the country need to do whenever they receive federal funding. It is a requirement in order to keep receiving that federal funding. So what Student Senate is doing is they're just putting out a booth out there, they're going to run free popcorn, Constitution books, and we actually had a group project to make personal poster boards of past presidents, just to give informational items and things as well like that as well, so students can stop by. We have Club Social coming up on the 16th, which ties into Club Rush, which is the 26th of September. So we're hoping that's a good turnout, just get students out there, get more involved, and encourage them to join the club. We also have a College Sequoia College Sequoia team for Relay for Life. That's in Rye Stadium, September 20th and 21st. We thought it was a good idea just to get our face out there, get College Sequoias out there, especially after the whole accreditation kind of process, just to show we are here, we're really proud, and we are staying. we're not shutting down for people. We're not shutting down. And as well as Mr. Brett Calvin came into one of our meetings last Tuesday, went over the manuals for us, and just told us to overlook, if there's any changes, things like that, and we overlooked and eliminated like minor changes to the student section. Other than that, that's it.
How do we support your Relay for Life team if we want to? Do you have
we actually have a link to where you guys can donate the money, or if you guys want, it's not closed off to just Student Senate. It's open to anybody that wants to join the team. So it's not just a Student Senate team. That's why it's called Sequoia, so anybody can join.
Okay.
I have the link on my phone, which I do not have on me because I left it there at home. But I can get that, and I can possibly just email it to you.
If you email it to me, I can get it out to our board members and staff.
Perfect.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Fidel? Thank you. Do we have any board member reports? Nope. Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to our foundation report. Mr. Foster.
Good afternoon. Let's see. On August 15th, we submitted a request for application. So we distributed that out to the faculty and staff for the $140,000 in project funds the foundation has. So we've begun that application process. The applications are due on December 15th of this year. That gives 120 days for faculty and staff to develop their application and get it to their vice presidents. That's quite a bit more than the 45 days we gave last year, so we're allowing for more time. Also, we're giving a 30-day window between when the VPs see it and when it actually gets to the foundation to allow for more back and forth between the original author of the proposal and the senior management. to refine the proposals. So we're looking forward to that. We're also providing a lot more foundation financial development support to our existing efforts. So this year, the COS Theater is selling season passes and tickets to all of their shows, all 4 of their plays online for the first time. COS Giant Athletic Success Campaign is all available online, so you can give $20,000 or $500 to the Giant Success Campaign, and it's all linked to our website. COS Baseball is accepting direct gifts and registering folks on their golf tour. So it's our first golf tournament online registration capability this season. So Coach Allen's our guinea pig for that. And others are taking notice. I'm getting a lot of requests. Hey, I see that there's a link to their site or their donation page. How do I get one of those? So we're just empowering all of our COS district staff and volunteers and coaches and those folks to go out and raise money in a little bit more sophisticated way and giving them the tools to do so. We had a great retreat on August 22nd with the entire foundation board. I got to tell you folks, the board members are really energized about the recent positive steps of the district under the trustees' leadership and that of President Carasosa. They're also energized about just how the foundation's running, and the new project funds really got them excited about seeing all of the need that the district has. There was, as I've mentioned before, there's $520,000 worth of requests for $105,000 worth of funding. It caused them to double that funding through some other category of funding, and caused them to up the amount that they're going to do this subsequent year to $140,000. So there's a lot of energy behind that. There's a clear desire for the foundation, by the foundation board, to have the foundation generate more resources for the district. For what is still the question, and so we're working on that. But in the meantime, I get to be charged with finding out how to turn on more resources for the district. And I'm going to be focusing my efforts on alumni development, annual campaign, and facilitating more grant pursuit on behalf of the district and with the district. And finally, I just wanted to reiterate some upcoming event dates. I didn't bother printing you and giving you another piece of paper to carry around because it's the same dates as the last meeting. But we do have the Crush Party coming up in Tulare on September 26th. The Hall of Fame is happening on October 2nd at the Porter Fieldhouse. And we have the baseball alumni game on October 11th. That's a Saturday here at the COS baseball field, and then the baseball golf tournament is October 12th.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of Mr. Foster? Great job. Thank you. Kudos to the foundation. It sounds like lots of new and different ways of doing things that will hopefully generate more. Thank you. Our accreditation report, Dr. Lucer.
Madam President, I'd like to defer my report to the information item number 5, and I'll present together there.
All right.
Thank you.
Our costume report. No, academic senate, sorry. Oh no, I'm skipping right over you. I'm going on to reports.
That's okay.
See what happens, Jim?
Sorry, I missed you.
I will be really brief. I just wanted to alert all of you, we've been trying to circulate a couple of new outreach documents, outreach processes that we're using this year to promote College of the Sequoias, to inform our community about College of the Sequoias. One of them is called Giant Talk, and it's a broadcast that's being done now out of our public information office. I've been forwarding you the links. If you click on them, we keep them about 5 to 8 minutes long. They're great video clips that will be featuring different college representatives, different advisors, different presenters about information that's going on throughout the college and over the course of the year. We have a new component in the public information office called Social Media Ambassadors, and they're actually student workers who are working under our public information office, charged with the responsibility to engage with our student population through their Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And so we've got videos that are video clips that are now being posted on Facebook where students are giving information about COS, upcoming events, registration deadlines, grading report deadlines, etc. And they're tapping into their Facebook followers for that kind of communication and information. And similarly, messages on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, which I'm sure you all have your accounts in order, so we can get.
I only do so I can monitor my son. I don't have it. Not enough room in my brain for all of that, but.
So we're excited about that because we know that that social media network among students is pretty pervasive, and we know that if we have meaningful information and it's short and in substantial sound bites, that they'll take it. That will be a good way of communicating with students. We're tracking it, we're monitoring it, we're going to measure its effectiveness by the responses, by the how many of those messages get opened, how many get viewed. So it's really a good little tool for us to try and determine how to steer some of our resources for public information in the future. And then the last thing I would just remind all of us, and I make a special request of you, Madam President, is that when we appoint our, or we issue the oath of office to our student representative each year after they've been elected, you know that they have a majority of the same privileges that any city board member does. They don't have a regulatory or a legal vote, but they have the opportunity on occasion to cast an advisory vote. Can make a motion for an item, can second an item, and can also cast an advisory vote. And sometimes if we have an item on the agenda that's very specific to student interest, and the board is concerned about how student representatives may feel about this item, you can call on your student board member to cast their advisory vote first. And tonight's item on the agenda, under action number 16, has to do with the activities benefit fee increase, which was actually generated out of our student senate. It might be a good opportunity to ask for our student board members' advisory vote as the first vote on that.
Okay. Remind me if I forget.
Sure.
Lori, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I wanted to tell Kevin, I looked at YouTube today, and you did an outstanding job.
Thank you.
Looked very professional.
Well, I don't know about that. So I'm sure it'll get better over time too. That was the first one. So.
Well, and just so all of you know, the reason I set up the Twitter account, I haven't been back to it since, was that was the only way I could figure out how to follow the COS baseball team that night they were playing in the playoffs. I kept looking for the live streaming and I couldn't get it, and so it said, get it on Twitter, and sure enough, I followed Twitter. It's the only time I've ever followed Twitter, but I do have an account so I could watch the baseball, or listen to the baseball game that night that we made it to the, which I didn't like the outcome of that last game, but I was on
But
Twitter.
you knew it, yeah.
I knew
You didn't have
every
to wait
minute,
for the
play by
big
play.
ones,
Yeah,
right?
it's pretty up to date. I was pretty impressed with Twitter. Okay, anything else, any questions? President's report? Okay, now we will move on to reports. Academic Senate, Dr. Trimble.
Good evening. Last Friday, the Academic Senate held their Senate retreat. We had really good attendance. There was about 20 people there. And we divided the day into 3 parts. We did training on academic and professional matters, where we reviewed both Title V and Ed Code, and we all learned a lot. It's not just the 10+1. There are a lot of other things that the Academic Senate needs to be involved in. Then we had one of our members train us on Robert's Rules of Order, which was also enlightening, if not a little scary. And so we're going to start practicing that this week. We'll see how that goes. And then finally in the afternoon, we spent quite a significant amount of time reviewing our new Constitution and bylaws in preparation to presenting it to the faculty. The existing Constitution and bylaws was in a fairly major state of disarray. It didn't conform to our governance manual in many places. It contradicted itself between the Constitution and bylaws in several places. So we had assigned that to a committee about a year ago. And so this is the first draft out. And what our goal is to bring it before the Senate in November for a vote. Once the Senate votes on the new Constitution, then I will convene an all-faculty forum so the faculty members can come and ask questions and give input onto the new Constitution. And then our goal is to have the vote during convocation in the spring. One complication from my perspective that we have is that it requires a 2/3 vote of all faculty, not just faculty that vote. So that means we have to get access to the faculty, and so our idea was that we could catch them at convocation. So as they sign in for convocation, we'll give them a ballot, make sure they vote and turn it in. The training, everything went really well. A lot of positive feedback from everyone, and I think everybody learned a lot and feels a lot more comfortable with what is and is not within the Senate purview. One of the things we did for both Robert's Rules and Academic and Professional Matters is we did scenarios where we looked at, okay, what are the issues here and what does belong with the Senate and what doesn't. And so I think that was really useful to see the practical aspects. The Academic Senate at its last meeting has approved the evaluation. Our annual evaluation of the Academic Senate and the committees will be going to District Governance Senate per the governance manual. And at next month's meeting, I'll be bringing it for information to the board so you can see what the evaluation was. Also, our recommendations for updates and changes to the 3 manuals, the governance manual, the planning manual, and the resource allocation manual, those recommendations will be forwarded to District Governance Senate for consideration and possible inclusion for the changes to the manual. I did want to bring up a concern for something that's on the agenda a little bit later on the management handbook. I have discussed the concerns with Mr. Carrizosa, and it's specifically related to the manager hiring procedure. Currently, there is one hiring committee, and that hiring committee has representatives from faculty and staff. The new process, from my perspective, dilutes the participation of faculty and staff to a very significant degree. Instead of one committee, there's 3 different processes. Faculty and staff are only for sure on one of them, of the 3. All of those processes generate numbers which will then contribute to the ranking of the candidates. The committee with the staff and the faculty won't be involved in any of that. They'll be involved with generating one set of the numbers. Senior management plays, I believe, a disproportionately large role in this process, and especially considering that they're going to be the ones that determine who goes forward for the second interviews. Since Mr. Carrizosa is on senior management, that's like him deciding who he gets to interview, which to my mind is a little bit of a conflict of interest in the process. So Mr. Carrizosa and I will be meeting to discuss those concerns as this goes forward. But again, my issue is that really the way it's stated now, faculty and staff is almost minimal. And I think that as we go forward, it's really important. Mr. Carrizosa has every right to hire whoever he wants. That's his job. That's what you delegate to him. But one of the things is we'd like to feel that our voices are listened to in some significant way along the process.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We'll look forward to hearing more about that when we get to item number 2. Comments or questions?
And I will talk about that when we get to it. Do you know on the 2/3 vote number what we need to make 2/3?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, all right.
But I think there's like 170 something.
Well, I think we're at 167 or something like that. It would be the number of full-time faculty?
Right.
Okay.
So it takes 2/3 of all faculty voting yes.
Gotcha.
And one more question. Yeah, I have a question.
I have just a quick question on that. Do you know on any given semester the percentage of full-time faculty that do attend the convocation?
I have no idea.
It's,
My assumption is it's basically supposed to be everybody unless they take a sick day. So that's what I'm
I
hoping.
didn't know if it was required.
It
is a
is.
required, yeah.
It's a required, one of their flex days, but they can take a sick day or other type of day. So usually we have somewhere between around 3 to 5 maybe that are not actually there that day for numerous reasons.
Percent or numbers?
3 people to 5
really?
people. Because we get all the reports.
Yes,
It's been pretty well
Yeah.
attended.
Yeah, we track all of those reports in my office. We take, Annette in my office takes the roll and everything there, and so it's a very small number, 3 to 5, and they always have some type of an absence or something that they've turned in
And
advance.
it's especially difficult now that we have the 3 campuses. If we have a general election, then we have to staff all 3 campuses for several days to try and get everybody out to vote. And so this way, it seemed like
all in one place.
And just according, and John's has a report coming up next soon, but it's 154
Yeah.
right now. It varies depending on paid time and leaves and all those kind of things, so.
I was just going to ask a question on your constitution and bylaws. How extensive is the document, or how many are there? Is it?
Oh, the Constitution is like 7 or 8 pages, and the bylaws are about the same. You know, big print, a lot of,
Yes.
but basically, I mean, we
That's
had
not
a lot
bad.
of issues that we had things in the Constitution that nobody had done for years. And so it was just time to change it and update it.
A lot of updating and aligning, you
Aligning,
said?
and the other thing is that they had put, when I went to training at the state meeting, we had previously put a lot of things in the Constitution that really belong in the bylaws. It's how you run your meetings and things. And that complicates it because the Constitution, it takes that 2/3 of all faculty to change. Bylaws you can change, the Senate can change their own operational things. So it became much more burdensome than it should have been. So we're trying to separate out what needs to be in the Constitution and what's more appropriate in the bylaws.
Having just done that on a couple of different other boards I sit on, it was a lot more lengthy than we expected. You get caught up in the words so I don't know how big your committee is, but I'm hoping you have enough time to do what you want to do.
Well, the committee's been working on it for a year.
Oh, God.
And
Oh,
and
okay.
unfortunately, even though they've been working on it a year, one of their members of that committee had 28 comments.
Okay, there you go. Okay. That's why I was asking you how long they were, just so in my head I
Thank
knew.
you for doing that. I know it was a big project that you had been planning, and you and your staff did a lot of work to get that going, so thank you for doing that.
Any more questions? Okay.
You were talking about, I assume is on number 2, National Handbook,
Yes.
and I don't, it's an information item, we're not going to prove it tonight, but I take it there's some disagreement between you and Stan about what it should say or does say, or I don't know, but I also heard you say you guys are continuing to talk about it.
Yeah, we actually haven't had a chance to sit down face to
So
face
it
yet.
seems like-
We're going to.
So I guess the board should leave it there for now, huh?
Yeah, this is here for information tonight. What I was going to do with this document is share with you what we did, but I'll also share at that time the intention I have to sit down with Thea and work through any adjustments that we still may need to make. The thing about the management handbook is it is a fluid document. It's a procedural guide. And so it changes routinely. And
Well, I'll wait until I hear that.
Okay.
On that too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, costume report. Mr. Sept.
Good evening, may I give it from here? It's very short. I just wanted to let you know that faculty appreciates the attention that's being paid to campus safety of students, staff, and faculty at this point. The information that has been provided has been very helpful and positive. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a CSEA?
No report?
Do we have a CASAPA report? Okay. Moving on to our general obligation bonds, these just announcements, next scheduled meeting for the Visalia area, Measure I is September 16th at 3 o'clock in the President's Conference Room, and for Measure J, September 30th at the Tulare College Center at 3 o'clock.
Can I ask you a question on Major I?
Sure.
How much money is left? Roughly? Because it sounds like we ought to be, that ought to be your normal way
We're
of
close to
thing.
dissolution, Greg, we are.
And it's almost all gone, and there's a little bit of the interest that we allocate for the library renovation.
Right, that's the last thing we'll do is the mold.
So there's probably 635,000 allocated for the renovation, there's probably 700,000.
But yeah, 'cause I'm thinking it's gonna be pretty close to shutting that down.
Okay, sorry, we can look at my agenda. Both classes. Information item number 1.
Good evening. And in the report, as you can see, according to Board Policy 4071, that minimum class size I am supposed to report to the board on low enrolled classes. This year, we're going to be reviewing all of the administrative procedures and board policies in the 4,000s, which are the academic services ones. And in one of the reviews, I realized we were supposed to also be reporting out on canceled classes to you. So you're going to notice a new column in here for classes that were canceled, most of them due to low enrollment. So you are familiar with this report. We give it to you based on the enrollment at the beginning of the semester or census date. And so you can see the agriculture had one low enrolled class and the rest were canceled for the low enrollment. The rest that are on that list.
And the that was canceled because low enrollment, is that because we can't give that certificate that we needed to?
We still have a certificate for the vet tech. We have a vet tech certificate. We do not have the degree. That's the one that we're not able to have. And so, but the
And the
certificate.
only way we can have that is if we have a
To
full-time
be
vet.
accredited, yeah, we have to staff
Yes.
it.
We have to have a full-time director in order to have that degree program and be accredited. But we still have a certificate program. Unfortunately, the enrollment was very low. I think we had 3 students enrolled. And so according to our policies, we can't run it at 3 students, so that we chose to cancel that class this semester. And Dr. Waldner and I, she's just, fully immersed in her new position as the dean there. We're going to be reviewing that program, the certificate, the degree, all of that this semester. We have the business, a few lower enrolled classes, consumer family studies, just 2 that were canceled for low enrollment. Fine arts, typical, the gallery, we need students to run that. We have about 13 students there. We add those 2 together. Some of our theater courses, they're a little, dangerous to have more than, 13 students up on the lighting, walking around in the theater, so we usually limit that to about 13. A couple that were canceled for low enrollment. Industry and technology, we had a program that was suspended, a couple for low enrollment, canceled, and then a couple that we ran with low enrollment. Language arts, it's our ESL classes and our higher level Spanish, and then the math and engineering are there too, and that was actually pretty good. We only had 2 low enrolled, and I double checked them all today for Mr. Zumwalt. So social science, just 1, and student services, just 1 class that we have out at Corcoran High School. Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
There's a slug up in agriculture that in low enrollment. Is that anything to be concerned about?
Those classes are mostly because they're not, they were either, I'd have to look up the details for each of them, but most of them were classes that aren't required for a degree or, those kinds of things. And some of the enrollment, like when you see it drafting too, is when we move to Tulare. And so we're working on getting the advertising out and getting all of that word out for those. But again, Dr. Waldner's brand new in the position, so we're reviewing all of these classes. Some of them were the order that they were offering them, that they shouldn't have actually offered it till next semester because there's a certain order that the students take the class. So we're reviewing all of those agriculture classes right now.
In the business, you can't be canceled because of low enrollment, career strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that class. About 3 sentences or less.
I don't know that much about that class, to be honest with you. Look, our student does, apologize. Thanks, Bill.
Yes, it's just getting the basic skills, it's more of a Com 1 class, I guess you could say. You learn how to speak in front of a group, how to speak properly in a professional math environment, and you learn how to use a PowerPoint. This class is like that, but there's other classes that integrate that same material in the other classes. So it's pretty much just getting your feet wet into the business world, learning how to speak in public, learning how to use PowerPoint and how to do presentations.
Any other questions?
Now, this
Yes.
included adjunct or our evening classes, all of our classes. Did we have any cancellations at Hanford, for instance?
Yes, some of these are from Hanford, and I don't have that specifically on here, which were Hanford or Tulare. And if you want me to include that next time, I can. Okay, we'll add a column for location. And but yes, I think probably maybe a third, maybe about a third are from Hanford. I can't remember how many we canceled, maybe like 8
3 ag classes, probably a total of 6.
Six from Hanford, and I think there was about this, well, the graphic designs, all of the industry and technology would have been at Tulare, and then the, I knew some of the ag were from Hanford, but the others would be from Tulare. And then there was, I think the music appreciation was Tulare, and it's Hanford, and then there was the history of rock and roll was Tulare then. One was Tulare, one was Hanford, and the music appreciation.
The ag classes though, Jennifer, or even some of the other ones, but I guess I specifically asked about ag, would those be offered somewhere else, or would they only be offered in Hanford? Like the ag economics and the ag management? Because I think those are part of the certificate program.
Yeah, I think we're offering them on both campuses, but I'm not
In Tulare and in Hanford.
Tulare and
So
Hanford.
there is still one of these being offered
Would be in
somewhere.
Tulare.
It wasn't-
But we rotate them. So they, you know, it's a 4, whether it's a 2 semester or 4 semester, you would rotate which semester you offer them. So I'm not sure if they're offered this semester in Tulare as well as Hanford.
You don't know, okay.
I have to double check that for you
Okay.
as well.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
So it's recommended that the board, oh, we don't have, it's just information.
That's it.
Never mind. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have Mr. Ratner for the presentation of our management.
Well, we've already briefly kind of touched upon the management handbook, and that's for informational item only tonight. But I wanted to kind of give you a brief history and how this came about. About a year ago, Stan and I started taking a look at the personnel policy for management council, which was a handbook designed for managers and confidential employees. And after looking at it and really analyzing it, we realized it was time to update that brochure, that book, that handbook. And over the next couple of months, Stan and I went back and forth on revising that handbook. And one of the major things we did was we separated management employees from confidential employees. Prior to us undertaking this task, both were combined within one handbook. What you have before you tonight is the handbook for management employees only. At some point, you'll be receiving for informational item the handbook on confidential employees, but for tonight, we're dealing solely with management employees. As you know, we have 3 bargaining units on campus. We have full-time faculty, part-time faculty, and classified employees. Those are true bargaining units that engage in collective bargaining. A unit I didn't mention are managers. Managers are not part of a collective bargaining group, nor do they engage in collective bargaining. They don't negotiate. And in many instances, in our old personnel policies for management council, it's read very much like a master agreement or a collective bargaining agreement. So one of the things we set out in doing is taking out all the items that appear to be negotiable and reflect really what is in the law. And one of the main things about managers are they serve at will. They serve at the discretion of the superintendent and the board, and their rights, although they do have them, are governed by the law and board policy, and they're not negotiated. So that's one of the major things we undertook in taking on this task, is to get any reference out of there that managers are a negotiating body, because they're not. So what you have in front of you tonight is the final product of several months of working on this. Management, Stan and I primarily wrote the entire document. The senior management had an opportunity to provide input. And also, during our management retreat, other managers were given an explanation of how this document came about and were given an opportunity to provide their feedback. Over the summer, we also had 2 additional meetings where managers were able to give their feedback. And what you have here is the final product. And a couple of the key components within this management handbook are that are included within the table of contents. You'll see things such as a management philosophy. It's a philosophy that we try to have all managers abide by. We have an ethics statement for all managers. we have a description as provided by the education code of how managers are employed, whether they are a classified administrator or an educational administrator. And we took what was in the ed code and put it within this management handbook. We also have a newly revamped hiring process, as you've heard very briefly about. We have a collection of the health and welfare benefits that managers have that have been set by the board. We also have a section that is pretty much taken right out of the California Education Code, and that has to do with leaves of absences. And finally, another key component we have in the management handbook are the evaluation process for managers. Again, I just want to emphasize that we felt it was important to have one area where managers can go and find such answers, find the answers to the questions they may have about their employment. But this all comes out of the ed code or policies and procedures set by the board and occasionally by Title V. And with that, again, it is only for an informational item tonight, but I'll open up to any questions about the management handbook, or if Stan has any comments he wanted to make.
Just a quick question, either for John or for Stan in that matter. I know that you mentioned the starting point for this document was the original document that was kind of set up in a somewhat different format. So that's part of it. But my question goes to: did you also look at examples of other management handbooks from other junior colleges within the state? And look at those with respect to what you put together. And I kind of asked that with respect to some of the things that Theo was asking about, so kind of a general question.
I did review, there were 4 or 5 very helpful community colleges that had their management handbook on their webpage that I was able to review. It's been 7 or 8 months since I reviewed those. I don't know specifically if they included their hiring processes. I do know from talking with Mr. Carasosa that the hiring process we have in place in this management handbook is a process that Stan has seen and used time and again. It works very, very well.
Will this be coming back to us for approval, or do we need to approve it?
You don't, Greg. It's an information item, and the reason it looks a little bit different to you is I don't think necessarily you've seen it before, because it's the kind of handbook that happens at an operational level, but we're trying to make sure that you're aware of what the handbook is and how it's put together and how it changes. And a couple of comments that I would add. I think John really covered everything well. What we tried to do in the beginning, in this whole spirit that we've been in the last couple of years, of revising documents, updating documents, procedures, and processes, is we looked at some components of this that really did read more like and were formatted like a union contract. And it was a little troublesome for many employees. There was even, occasionally some confusion over whether management had the same kind of entitlement rights that that represented employees did. And so we were trying to reteach ourselves a little bit, and that's why you see a management philosophy embedded in this. You see a set of core values, and those came out of our summer institute and a couple of days of taking managers through exercises and discussions, trying to get to the heart of what we represent as a management team. And so the first thing was to get us back into the model and the format of a real handbook, a user type of handbook that was more of a procedural and a guiding kind of manual. And then specifically with respect to the hiring procedures, John made the comment earlier, he sensed maybe that Dr. Trimble and I might disagree on some of this. I think it's too soon to say that we disagree. We haven't had time to meet yet. And I did shoot this to Thea a week or so ago because I knew it was coming here, and I know that it's something that eventually we'll want to share with Senate. But what John and I did was looked at a series of management hiring practices, and we went to associations like the California Community College Administrators Association, the California League of Cities, the California School Boards Association. And when you go to their personnel components or you go to their personnel institutes, you'll see very common a multi-panel process. And you'll see the concept of independent scoring so that there's a way to try to cross-reference and find the frequency of high performance in two different panel settings. That's a pretty common practice. We haven't used it here a lot at College of the Sequoias. After listening to Thea's responses to me, I went back and just reread that section, and I can see now, especially from her perspective, reading it cold, where the reference over and over again to senior management or designee, senior management or designee, senior management or designee is pretty heavy. And so I think when we have the opportunity to discuss, her and I, and we talked about what that really means, oftentimes it is designee, or where it says faculty may be involved, it's implied there that faculty will be involved. I think if we tighten up some of that language and make it more clear, I think I'm certainly open to faculty and staff being on more than one part of the three-part process. So we started with a model that we know works really well, but I don't want it to be one that leaves people here feeling like they're devalued in any way. So I'm pretty confident when Dr. Trimble and I get some time that we'll be able to reach common ground. We've wrestled over a few things and we've always come out shaking hands, so I think we will on this one too.
Corey?
Yes.
I'm doing a whole lot of guessing here, and I don't see a resolve. I heard Dr. Trimble talk about concern about how much input the faculty had. You went right straight to talking about multiple committees. You wouldn't have done that, I don't think you should. So I suspect that's what it is. You perceive this to be a superior process. I'm guessing Dr. Trimble doesn't. And I'd be real interested when you guys get done hashing it out.
We'll bring it back. We'll
Yeah,
share.
but I do want to clarify, John, it isn't that I am upset about the process. I'm upset about the issue that the way it's currently worded, there's very little participation of faculty or staff.
Well, I
So
don't-
it's not the fact that there's multiple things.
Right,
We do that, we have a teaching demo.
right.
The scenario is just the administrative equivalent of that.
I accept that. You can tell I don't have a clue. And the point is, I'd be interested in having a clue once you guys are more have digested each other's point of view.
We'll do that.
I know for one, and I think my fellow board members will agree, we appreciate the transparency, we appreciate these discussions. They help us see that these things that are necessary so that we can fulfill that model up on the wall, these things have to come and be discussed somewhat in this format. So we're at least aware of it, even though we know we don't vote on it. It sure helps us make other decisions and see what's going on. So we appreciate the comments and keeping them. I think it's very productive dialogue myself, so thank you.
I tell people all the time, if they want anything from this president, senior management, have Thea come and ask for it.
And board kind of goes the same way.
I have to do things.
Thank you very much. Okay, so is that, any other questions on the management handbook or comments from John or you, Stan?
No, yes.
Okay, we'll move on past the handbook. We're on item number 3 to the annual staffing report.
One of the things that, as a dean of HR, I'd like to do from starting last year is to present to the board sort of an annual employee report of where we are as far as managers, confidential employees, classified employees, and full and part-time faculty members, just so we have a history of the employment trends that we're experiencing here at the College of Sequoia. Rather than guessing where we were 5 years ago, we'll now be able to determine where we were in any given year. Last year was the first time I brought this personnel report to the board, and essentially what I'm doing, what I did last year, what I'm doing this year, is just providing you a list of all the employees we have on campus. All the managers, all the classified employees, and confidential employees, and full and part-time faculty members. I have provided a spreadsheet of the employees we have on campus. And I should point out that the numbers change all the time. This report was written or run August 1st. Well, here we are on September 8th, and there's already a few minor adjustments that need to be made if we were to get a true reflection of where we are today And one of the things I want to point out is that we have 156 full-time faculty members. The adjunct, classified, and confidential employees are correct, and we have 39 managers instead of 40. And I just want to make those changes to actually reflect where we are today at the board meeting. And again, I'll be bringing this report to the board next year, August or September, just to give us an annual update of where we are.
John, maybe I didn't actually make myself clear. Last year, I know we talked about, and because I kept this in my notes from last year's report, I had asked for if it would be possible and helpful for me anyways, to see it from year to year. I think I drew it on my notes last year, so I'm not going to get this year, but in terms of, maybe 3 or 4 years back, the number of all of the categories, and then our FTES, because I think that would be helpful in the questions we may have for you if we could see the trends and how they correlate with FTEs, does that make sense?
Yeah, a multi-year
All in one sheet.
table, yeah, just a multi-year
Can I have
table
an
with
example?
just numbers.
You're going to test my computer skills with some kind of table like that? Yes, absolutely.
Well, that'll just show us the trends, and therefore the questions I think would be helpful. And we can see where our fund is compared to where we are, and then I think having the FTS on there helps us too, just to see where are we in terms of personnel and how many students do we have. And it shows trends in our budgets and when we've done cuts and where we've cut, and I think that would probably be helpful in terms of questions we may ask on the staffing report. It's going to be useful to us.
I think it'd be useful if we set it next year, next month.
Yeah, we can get a spreadsheet put together and bring that back for another overview.
Thank you.
John, just what am I missing on the list of the 40 management employees? Are the category of confidentials, are they in this? Are they included in this 40, or are they additional? And so where are they?
Confidential are included within the classified employees.
Or within the classified?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And are they identified as confidential?
No, they are not. There's 6 confidential employees on campus, and what I'll do to make that even more clear is I'll set the report for the confidential.
Okay, great. We're gonna have a great week.
And there is a legal criteria that has to be met for a classified employee to be designated confidential. And so you'll see by nature of their position why they fall in that category.
Okay.
Any other questions from Mr. Batch on our staffing report? Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Item number 4 is our quarterly financial report. Staff.
Okay, good evening. I have our quarterly financial report referred to as the CCFS 311Q, and this is for the 4th quarter of 13-14. It is here for information only. It's requested by the Chancellor's Office, basically so that they can have oversight responsibility for our financial reporting. And what I'd like to do is walk you through it a little bit. It's a fairly simple report. I will say this is 4th quarter. There will be an annual prepared soon, and the annual is a thicker document than this. You scroll down, or I can scroll with you. Okay, is it that way? Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Got a pointer too. Okay, so this is basically our actuals at the end of the year, but again, it's not our year end. I will say it will be adjusted by about $4,000 in expenses when we show you our annual, but it's very close. And so the top line has unrestricted general fund revenues. You'll note we went from 49 million to 45 to 48 this year. I'll mention a little later that 48 includes moving that indirect/mandate cost fund from deferred revenues to our actual revenues. So it's inflated by $1 million there as we move those dollars in. And then the expenses went from 50 million down to 45, and then this year to 46.5. So you can really see the fiscal crisis and crunch that we as a district have gone through the last couple of years. The revenues over expenditures, you will see a $1.761 million amount. $1 million of that were those one-time funds that were part of a fund that had been set aside to see us through the fiscal crisis, feeling like we're basically over that hump. We moved those into our general fund, and those dollars are falling to fund balance now, which is the main reason why we have a higher fund balance, which I'll talk about a little later. It is also comprised of $761,000 that fell, extra dollars that fell. Of that, about $400,000 is carryover that I'll talk about a little bit more as we adopt our budget, but carryover from different departments that we do allow. And then there was $150,000 for a degree works possible purchase, actually a student success match. That's going to be one-time dollars. And then some other dollars, a little over $200,000 that fell. And then there's the $215,000 prior year adjustments. I wanted to mention this. Ken might appreciate this, but as a prior auditor, we used to pride ourselves in never having prior year adjustments. So when I came here, I was a little surprised to always see these prior year adjustments. And I fairly quickly learned that the state does not finalize our funding for a given year until 15 months after that year has closed. So there's no possible way that we will ever have it perfect. And in this particular year, the state sent us an additional $215,000 about the middle of the year, and that basically falls to fund balance or it becomes part of fund balance. What I think you'll be pleased to see is the percentage of general fund balance is at 10.1%. And again, I'll explain a little bit more at the budget presentation. It's actually an 8.5% plus those carryover one-time items that I'll give you a little more information on of $552,000. So once you see our first, our P1 or our next quarterly, you'll see that drop because the carryover dollars will have been posted.
Any questions?
I had a few other things to say. Sorry, I'm reaching FTES.
Well, usually she goes to the
Good
last
try, good
page.
try. I didn't know how rare it is. Lori, to hurry through the budget.
I see yes on the last page. I'm like, nobody's going to talk about that, but I'm sure it's coming up in the budget.
Yeah. So the FTS, again, we were at 10,500 just 3 years ago, dropped to 9 and then to 86. This last year, counting both summers, we were at 9478. And a good news item, sorry, I should do this just with my left hand. A good news item is cash. We did not have any borrowed funds at the end of the year, and we actually had a cash balance of $1.3 million. So that's a real good news item. We obviously had cash the last 2 years, but a lot of borrowed funds, mostly from other funds within our district and some out of the district. And then, moving on. Let's see. I don't know if there are any other specific questions, but on the last page, as our president mentioned, did the district have significant events for the quarter? Trying to read it from afar. Basically, this is maybe a slightly different significant event, but it does significantly affect our fund balance. And it just was the fact that, it's hard to read, indirect costs and mandate reimbursements were booked as revenue, which were previously deferred revenue, allowing a $1 million increase to general fund balance. And again, this is information only, and that there were no significant fiscal problems that need to be addressed this year or next.
Can I make a quick comment, Lori? Just for your recollection, do you guys remember that roughly $1 million, 900 plus, that we were rolling along during the deficit, during the fiscal solvency plan years? Okay. I just wanted to make sure you connected it back to that same one-time mandated reimbursement we had when Dr. Straughn was here. And moving that thing forward now, we've brought it fully out into the light and are letting it drop to fund balance.
Yep. Any other questions?
Comment.
Mr. Duval?
I've been here 20 years, and in that period of time, I've been part of four decisions from time to time. A high percentage of those decisions resulted from financial information coming forward that was wrong. And I can't tell you how good I feel when I know that I can trust the numbers that come to me. And I'd appreciate it if you'd share with your staff that I, for one at least, and I don't know if the board members have been around for a while, that there were some bad decisions based on bad numbers. Just how grateful we are that somebody spends hours and hours and hours and hours making sure the numbers are right. We got to a point at one time where I was afraid the budget was very close because I was afraid the money really wasn't there. And, please share your stuff, how much I, for one, I think the board appreciates what it takes to check, recheck, and check. And don't trust the county's offices because they don't really know maybe really doing the numbers. It makes the board much more confident in what we do.
Well, I will certainly do that, and thanks will be given both for this and the budget adoption to Linda McCauley, who's our chief accounting officer, and also Leangela Miller, who's now our director of budget and capital planning, because they do spend hours and hours, and they're very meticulous and detail oriented.
I remember a few years ago where there was $1 million mistake compounded and made it $2 million because they had to pay the $1 million back. And a year later, they made the same damn mistake. Well, you know, I remember that. So it just feels good not to work on it.
Okay, John, I just want you to know that the staff people that you're giving accolades to was trained by me.
You know what? That explains everything.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the Reading Commission for Community Junior Colleges follow-up reports. Our first reading is Michael Zerner.
All right, so I'm just going to take you briefly through the follow-up report here on the screen, and then I'll talk about the report itself. So as you know, we are required to have a follow-up report to the ACCJC in October, and we have an ACCJC site visit in November. We don't know the exact date yet, but we should be finding out shortly. They will have their meeting in January 2015. And we should hear or have an action letter on by February 2015.
It's from the Christmas hour.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Valentine's
Be a
Day,
day of love
hopefully
this
it's
year, I
gonna
hope.
come wrapped with a box of chocolates and Barbadino, right? Okay, so a couple of things for the accreditation timeline. I just wanted to review this. In fall 2012, we had our self-evaluation and visit. In fall 2013, we had our show cause report and visit. In 2014, our follow-up report and visit. And then in 2015, it's a never-ending cycle, we have our midterm report. And so that's every 6 years you have your self-evaluation, and in between those 6 years, you have your midterm report. And we've talked about the action plans from the show cause report. In the fall 2015 midterm report, we need to address those action plans that came out of our show cause report. And then the other thing is that in spring 2016, the new accreditation standards will be implemented. And so we will have from spring 2016 until fall 2018 to learn all of those inside and out, and our next self-evaluation is due fall 2018. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of a timeline there. Okay, so in the report that's before you for a first read, we have 3 recommendations. The first one is on planning. And as you remember, in 2012, when the team looked at our self-evaluation, they found we lacked a formal planning model. We may have had planning, but there wasn't a formal model. And in 2013, we developed our model and implemented the model, which is behind me at the top. And for 2014, for this report, we need to show in this report that our model has been evaluated and that we're using both quantitative and qualitative data to evaluate that model. So showing that we're continually improving. Our next recommendation, and they're not going to be in the number order, because if you remember from our show cause, we had from our self-evaluation, we had 7 recommendations. We addressed those in our show cause report, and 3 of them remained. Recommendation 1 was a combination of several other things. Recommendation 3 remained, and recommendation 7. So recommendation 3, research capacity, in 2012, we did not even have a research director. And so we had a lot of room to grow in our research arena. In 2013, we hired a research director, but we had also developed this whole planning model that had data at its core. And then in 2014, for this report, we have to show that we are using data as we said we were going to guide our decision-making, planning, and our budget allocation processes. So our recommendation 7, which is our third recommendation, is evaluation of processes. So again, in 2012, they said for our decision-making and our budgets that we did not, our budget development process, that we did not have a good formal evaluation process for those systems. And then in 2013, we developed a resource allocation manual, we implemented that, and we played that out all of last year. So what we need to show in this report is that we evaluate the decision-making process and the budget development process, and that on those evaluations, we improve. Okay, so if you look at your information item, the cover sheet, I'll turn to the report now. We were, as I mentioned, we were issued warning, and we are required to do the follow-up report by October 15th. I do want to point out, I want to read from this cover sheet that the commission's letter, and one of the things that Barbara Bino, in conversations that I had with her, and that Stan and I both had with her, is that in the letter they said the College of Sequoias has done significant and commendable work to reform the institution and comply with most accreditation standards. And she pointed out to us and had us circle, and I think with Dr. Osterk as well, that they don't say that often, the significant and commendable work. That's a big thing. They really recognize the work we did. But there were a number of items that we needed to complete before we fully complied. So in the deficiencies, there are 5 standards and the 3 recommendations that I just reviewed with you. So when you look at the follow-up report, and a couple of things I want to point out with the follow-up report, that this is still in draft. It's going forward currently to District Governance Senate and Academic Senate. We'll be here for a final read for the board at your October meeting. It has not been edited, it's not formatted, and we still need to add the evidence. And so I just wanted to make sure that you're not looking for grammar or punctuation, because we're working on that right now, and we will have all of that. It will look much better. Those things will be completed by the next version. So I'm not going to go through the whole report, but for your reference, there at the beginning, we discussed the 5 standards that we were addressed in that we were required to address in this follow-up report. And so there's 5 standards. In each standard, there's a descriptive summary that really talks about the kind of way I would picture it is that's where we were. The self-evaluation is where we are. And then the actionable improvement plans is anything that still needs to be done. So that's how I would look at the standards. And so we have 3 standards. So you'll, again, descriptive summary where we were, self-evaluation where we are, and actionable improvement plan where we need to be.
So when they say none, that means you've completed the standards to the accrediting commissions. They're okay with those are the ones that you say.
This is our evaluation. So this is the evaluation that we've written about ourselves. And what we're saying to them is, we are here, we've done all of this, and we're complete. So in all of the standards and recommendations, we are saying we've done it all. And we have to meet the standards. We don't have a choice. You have to meet all of the standards. So we've said, and we strongly feel, when you look at all of the information, we strongly feel we've met everything that we were expected and more. So you have, following the standards, again, we have the no actionable improvement plans that we have there. Then we go into the 3 recommendations. We have an introduction for planning, and we have the background, which is the where we were, the actions taken to resolve recommendation 1, and those are what we've done, where we are now. So it's all of the work that we've done over the past year. And we basically put anything that happened between November 1st, 2013 and October 1st, 2014, we've included in this report. So if you see, well, what about we did this or we did that, that would have, if it was before November 1st of 2013, it would have been included in the last report. It would have been included in our show cause report. So we took it from November 1st, 2013 until basically anything that was going to be completed by October 1st. So there's some things that haven't happened yet, but we know they're going to happen in September. And then we have, we listed and then the last section of the recommendations, you can see starting on page 37, it has the 2013 show cause report actionable improvement plans. And I mentioned those already. And so these are things that we said in the show cause report we still needed to do. The majority of those are done, and you'll see in the write-ups that we've done them. But we know we need to write to them for that midterm report. So we included them here as a list, that these are the things that we know we're going to write about in the midterm report. But we've addressed all of them in the background information. So we have recommendation 3 on research capacity. Again, an introduction, the background, the actions we've taken to resolve recommendation 3, and it's been significant. There's several pages of it. We're very busy. And then again, on page 44, we just listed the actionable improvement plans that relate to that recommendation. Again, most of them have been completed, but we won't write about those until the midterm report. And the last thing is recommendation 7, evaluation of processes, introduction, background, the actions taken, and then finally the actionable improvement plans that relate to that. Now, we are working madly on the evidence, and I think Thea and I spent a couple hours together on Thursday. Dr. Hollabaugh did an incredible job getting all of our evidence into one document. I was able to finalize that today, and we're going to get the evidence list completed and get it up on our website, so we'll have all of that ready for the next version that you see. So that was a quick walkthrough, I hope. And are there any questions on this is information first read. You guys have a lot of reading to do if you haven't already read it all.
Well, this one seems to be almost like a synopsis of all the work that was done, really. So even though it seems like it's nothing compared to your original. That's right.
And I'm telling you, when it came out to be 50 pages, it did. I mean, we spent a significant amount of time. Dr. Oster, Dr. Trimble, Dr. Hollabaugh, myself, Christian Anderson, and Matt Beret. We spent the majority of the summer and the majority of June writing this, and it didn't feel like it was only 50 pages, but we were really happy that it was only 50 pages at the end. That the editing team did an incredible job putting this together, so I need to thank each of them for their commitment to this work.
Any other questions or Dr. Stone on the report? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it as well. Thank you. Okay, we are moving on to information item number 6, which is our annual college.
And this will be a brief item. It piggybacks right on top of what Dr. Lucerna was just presenting. But one of those processes that we need to complete in conjunction with our integrated planning and the annual reporting is this annual report on the master plan. You'll recall that in this first year, we were actually doing an annual report on the strategic plan, which was our adjusted goal, or our adjusted district objectives from the previous original 5-year strategic plan for College of the Sequoias. And because we were 2 years away from the start of the next cycle, the district objectives that we're working with for 13-14 are the same district objectives that will continue for us in 14-15. And during that same period of time now, we're developing our new master plan. And when the master plan is completed, and we'll have it before the board for adoption in January, we'll begin the 2015 strategic plan, which is a 3-year interval, and then we will set forth the updated or new or revised district objectives. So this is really an executive summary for you of the detailed table that we analyzed for you at your June board meeting when we came forward and reviewed the annual report on the strategic plan. And what we tried to do with this document was make it a little bit more user-friendly and make it a little bit more like the kind of public relations document that we need to start with a page different than that one. A document that we could use more in our communications with the community and with the public, something that was easy to read, that highlighted the positive elements of the last year at the college, and in addition, reported very specifically on the 8 district objectives. So you see it formatted in that way. I want to thank Kevin McCusker, David Cargill, the folks in public information and in graphics and design, along with all of the information that we've been gathering and collecting to put this together. You'll see it's a combination of some of the elements that we highlighted at convocation, along with demographics and data about our student population and trends in that population for the past year. And then very specifically, we move into what we feel is a pretty simple report that what we call would pass the coffee shop test, that you could sit around the coffee shop with friends and look at this and make some sense of it, because we've tried to really make it easy to understand. But it's our 8 district objectives and the annual report on those. A little different format than the very detailed kind of Excel spreadsheet type document we reviewed with you in June. The information is all the same, it's just that the presentation is different. So we wanted to make sure that you saw a copy of this. We have a plan to produce these, to circulate these, to make the annual report available. So this kind of concludes that annual college report with you seeing the technical data and information in June, and now a executive summary to be circulated publicly here in September.
Any questions? I really like this report. Another great one that we recapped. I noticed you and I, John, are a lot younger in here. They used our old pictures.
I noticed that. She even received a picture of the wall here, that picture of it at 20 years old.
It's the only one I have.
Well, that's John,
I like to say it's back when I had hair.
that's his high school yearbook picture.
Well, that is young.
All right, good.
Your high school yearbook picture.
Okay. Moving right along. We are on item number 7, which is an update, a review of our COS mission statement. Mr. Calvin.
Thank you, President Cardoza. In accordance with our integrated planning manual, the district is to review our mission every 3 years and either reaffirm it or make any appropriate adjustments. The process and timeline for doing so starts in September. The President has asked the District Governance Senate to appoint a task force to review the mission and seek district-wide feedback this fall and make a recommendation back to the DGS, who will then make a recommendation to the superintendent, who will make a recommendation to the board in January of 15 as to whether to reaffirm it or to make adjustments to the mission. So we wanted just to give you an update that we are starting that process. If you're interested, we have attached the appropriate pages from the Integrated Planning Manual, which gives the timeline and process for doing so. But rest assured, this work is going on this fall, and we will bring a recommendation back to you in January. Any questions?
Questions? Can we talk about this at retreat as well? We're just starting, we talk about it at a board retreat.
Mission statement?
Yes, and then it will come to the January meeting, but the retreat usually after the January meeting.
Right. Right.
Whichever order, but it's okay. Any questions on the mission statement?
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to our consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and be enacted by one motion. An item may be removed from the consent calendar at the request of any member of the board or any person in the audience considered as a separate agenda item. Do we have any items that need to be removed from the consent calendar? Seeing none, no motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Sherman. Come second.
Second.
Seconded by Ken, I think, by John. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar, signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. Moving on to our first action item, which is curriculum new, modified, and graded doctoral cert.
Okay, as you recall, last meeting, I reviewed the process for a curriculum review or an approval at the district. And today you have before you our very short first report.
It's very
And-
short.
Yeah, and it's recommended, well, that's because we don't necessarily
Not
meet
there
all
yet.
summer, so the next one will be big. It's recommended that the board approve this curriculum report that has already been approved by the curriculum committee and academic senate. There is one adjustment on the first one, the modified police academy module 3. The effective date should actually read fall 2015, not fall 2016. So that's just one change. So there's one modification to module 3 of the police academy. There's deletions for AJ and computer and geology, and a deletion of the English degree for transfer. But that is because there's a new degree that's the transfer model curriculum for English that better meets our student needs.
Okay, any questions regarding our curriculum? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve? Yeah, you can be right.
Yes, you can.
Okay, it's been moved by Fidel.
Second.
Seconded.
Jumping in the
By
mix.
Mr. Sewell.
He's warming up for item number
He's
16.
getting ready, exactly. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. On to item 13, our annual appropriation limit.
Okay, this is also known as the GAN limit, which has been in state law since 1979. You might be familiar with it. It's actually a pretty simple calculation. The state annually takes their appropriations to every state governmental agency, and it adjusts them by a price factor and then goes on to adjust them by a population factor. This year, we're down a little bit on our price factor, but up on a population factor. And so what that does is create a new GAN limit for us that we need your approval through a resolution tonight. At the state level, we really don't have to worry about this at all. At the state level, the state by law is not allowed to exceed appropriations beyond the state GAN limit. So they gather up all these governmental agency limits, put them together, and it's really their issue, but we do need to report. So our new appropriations limit for 14-15 is $90,123,97, but our actual appropriations received are only $44.5 million. So we're nowhere near the limit at our level.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Zumwalt, seconded by Mr. Mann. Megan, please poll the board.
Trustee Zumwalt.
Aye.
Trustee Mann.
Aye.
Trustee Lumet.
Aye.
Trustee Sherman.
Aye.
Trustee Perez.
Aye. Passes. Okay. Moving right along. Item number 14, our district budget.
And they can, sorry, this is advanced. Okay, I think I've got this. So we have a very large budget book for each of you tonight. It was in our board agenda item. And the final budget is here for your approval tonight. The budget book itself is fairly large. I'm not going to go through that page by page, but if you have any questions, perhaps as I conclude the PowerPoint, let me know. Again, a lot of work by Linda McCullough, and we have Linda Hernandez on this as well as Karen Pauls, who works with me in my office. And so the budget itself, the format you'll see on this PowerPoint is very similar to what we did in the tentative. So I'll try and breeze through some of the items a little bit faster. And I have my water if I get talking too much. The budget process, basically number 7, we are here now in September where it's time to adopt our final budget. The budget assumptions, most did not change a lot. 2.75% access you're familiar with, our new FTES. The COLA, 0.85% didn't change. Health insurance cost went up just a bit. At tentative, we had $84,000 in there. Now it went up to $100,000 as we finally got our numbers. The one new thing here is we do have an additional full-time temporary English faculty. So in this budget, there's an additional cost of $95,000. We lost, I believe, some faculty members just as we were starting the year. And then we lost some pieces of adjunct as well. And we really had to scramble, so we did hire one full-time temporary English. This budget also includes, which was not in the tentative, a 3% salary increase for CSA management and confidential units. The cost was $330,000 to the unrestricted, $411 total. And I wanted to go ahead and list how we covered those expenses as we adopted, what changed from tentative to enable us. We did move $90,000 for our new veterans counselor into SSSP ongoing, because you'll note that we now have SSSP dollars to budget. We did pay off a muni lease right there at the end of June, which freed up $55,000 a year. CalSTRS, the actual amount we needed to adopt went down from 9.5% to 8.88 between tentative and final. And then I'll talk a little bit about some instructional equipment dollars that we moved in and allowed to free up some general fund unrestricted dollars. And capital bills covered their share of that.
SSSP.
Sorry, student success and
Support.
support
Program.
program. That's Brent's area. Okay, also included is the 1.15 million for scheduled maintenance and instructional equipment. And I wanted to mention that this is new because at tentative, we didn't have any numbers really to budget, so we had zero for both. But we also thought at the time that there would not be any instructional equipment. We knew it was going to be real close to the 1.15 million total. So the way it came out and the way it is reflected in the budget, we kept the $635,000 that we basically planned for the Live Oak renovation coming out. That's that other half of the Live Oak renovation, this coming out of scheduled maintenance. And then we took what was remaining and we basically, a little over the $500,000, and split the two between scheduled maintenance projects. So we'll be able to do a little additional, be it plumbing or some roof repairs or things like that. Eric has those lined up and ready to submit to the state. And then the instructional equipment gets a little more complex than what we've known in the past. I don't believe we've received a lot from the state annually. Last year was $109,000. Prior, I hadn't heard of anything over $200,000. So to receive $257,000 is good news. But what the state said is you can have this money, but they're changing how they're allocating it. And similar to a scheduled, our 5-year facilities plan that we have to submit to the state, they now want a 1-year solid instructional equipment plan with a 5-year projection. And we usually use this for our above base. And at this point in time, when we're adopting our final budget, we have no idea what we're going to be spending our above base funds on. So we did a swap. We moved this into our refresh plan for technology. And I worked with Tim Hollabaugh to come up with, really define our refresh plan. And we just swapped out those dollars. So we're now going to use this for those computers that are labs for students in classrooms, and that freed up dollars. And basically, I thought I would also list where the freed up dollars went, because if you're swapping that, now you have general fund unrestricted. So that's part of how we covered the full-time temp. I mentioned earlier the increased salary costs. There was, when everything came out in the wash, $37,000 less for state apportionment to our district. And the last item is, since we got these dollars for instructional equipment, we ought to allocate some. So we did put $50,000 earmarked for additional instructional equipment. I mentioned other general fund unrestricted costs because sometimes there's some noise in the budget that you need to cover. And recently we had to even hire another full-time temporary English faculty, but we're only doing so for 1 semester because we had some faculty, one with health issues that couldn't cover half the load, and 2 others that we were still trying to cover. So I haven't moved that $50,000 yet, but we may need to do that, cover that. There's always a lot of movement in the budget. Also, some final budget assumptions, the student success funding, which I did refer to as SSSP. We had that budgeted at $548,000 when we had our tentative, and now we know that it's going to be close to $1.1 million. Could be as high as 1.2, could be a little lower. So we're working on the budgeted expenditures for that now. Student equity funding is a brand new pot. At tentative, it was at 0. In final budget right now, it's still at 0 because when we had to get this to print, we didn't have any information from the state. But we did receive just late last week that we're going to receive almost $693,000. This is new money. It's a new pot of money. It's restricted for basically to be expended according to our student equity plan, and our student services department is working on that. I thought it was interesting to see how did the state allocate it. They're getting more and more complex up there. But just for your information, 40% was FTES, Pell Grants, household income, age, educational attainment, and unemployment rate. I'm glad they're doing that calculation and not us. Also, the final budget reflects the decrease in the STRS that I mentioned earlier. And there's one other small item. I had some deep discussions with Dr. Lacerna, and we have an applied music program that requires students to have outside hours of music instruction. We were one of maybe only 2 community colleges in the state still requiring our students to pay for that, and it really does almost amount to a student fee. So we utilized the dollars here to create $24,000 for some hourly, mostly it'll be professional expert instruction and some benefits there. The music department was happy to see that. So the numbers are, in total here, general fund unrestricted is $49 million. If someone asks you how big is your district budget, it's $49 million unrestricted, $59 million when you combine it with our restricted side of the general fund. You previously saw a $44,000 surplus. We're down to a $10,000 surplus, but happy to still be in a surplus position as we adopt this. The next slide talks a little bit more about the funds and our fund balance, and I think I brought up something that I wanted to talk you through. So we, looking at 1450, we just talked earlier about closing 1314, and I mentioned how our fund balance is higher. That's really a 10% fund balance. Includes that one-time dollars, $1 million that dropped. The $552,000, what is designated there, facilities always does have carryover. They don't seem to have more carryover every year. It's always about $100,000. So they had $100,000 again this year, and basically they're spending their annual budget. It just seems to be the same amount. We're waiting kind of for that one-time emergency when we may need that. The Safety Council had a $6,000. That's the Safety and Facilities Council. $38,000 in utility rebates, which will carry over for utility purposes. The biggest portion is law, and you're familiar that that's split out through a bunch of different departments and divisions, and that was $245,000. And the last portion of that is $150,000 for a degree tracking software system that we may need as a district match for some of these either student services, student success, or student equity funds. So that added to the projected surplus would put us at about $4.166 million as we close next year, and that comes out to about an 8.5%. So you're probably familiar with seeing something in the high 2 millions with our prior 6%. This now has the additional million and another close, $225,000 that is included there. And just for comparison purposes, a statewide average community college fund balance is close to 16%, which this would put us again at about 8.5%. There was a survey done recently that I think some of you may have received a copy of, and I was interested to see that it did show that is close to the statewide average. So we're making a little ground. I'm not going to go through these links in great detail. I'll just tell you what the differences are. We last time wanted to link how we're using our resources, how we're allocating them to our district mission, our district objectives, and basically our resource allocation cycles. So the new thing here is that one additional full-time temporary faculty in English. When I mentioned that other one that's for one semester, that's not in this budget yet. Let's see, there we go. I don't think there's anything big here other than this new student success, student equity funding. We have allocated what will be carryover of $150,000 one-time dollars to help with a degree tracking system if needed. This is our above base. We had $200,000 in one pot at tentative. Now we have it kind of out of 2 pots here, general fund and perhaps from restricted lottery for the other half. Whoops, not too fast. These were here before, our public information and then our Office of Research and Institutional Planning, and also links between resource allocations and our district goals included these additional staff members. One change here from tentative is there was a C6 grant manager being discussed and planned, but that's no longer on here. They're stepping back and looking at their budgets a little bit more closely, especially that C6 grant. So we get into fiscal solvency and looking at that. What we have in 14-15, you'll hear me often say I look at general fund unrestricted because our restricted side, for the most part, always covers its own expenses. Our general fund unrestricted is where we don't want to go too far deficit. So this year, everything's set up, but next year, what are the changes going to be? And a lot of these are similar to what I was reflecting at tentative, but I did want to show you these, the person stirs, that's going to be our big chunk the next couple of years because those numbers are the district contributions are marching out. So we're going to have, and these are my ballparks, but we are going to have some real dollars to have to allocate there. Reduction of FTS, a little hard to explain, but in 14-15, we were still paying for half of the summer of 14, which was an extra summer school. So next year, we only pay for one summer school, so there's a little savings in our salaries there. The provost will come on next year, or is budgeted there. Fawn, this is open to discussion. Just late last week, we got some information on our fawn. We may need to increase that. But at this point, I was only including in these projections two fawn, which is our faculty obligation number. And then for the one temporary that's in this budget, the plan is that's temporary, so that would come out next year. So you can see we've got some pretty hefty increased costs. The biggest difference being these benefits that are really climbing up. So if we take those and add them to, except this, I've got a trigger finger here. So,
But just to go back just one quick,
Right there.
the 332,000 for reduction in
Yes.
FTES, is the reason for that the way we counted the FTES in 1 year as opposed to the other year where we had an option? It's not
it
a
is.
true reduction.
Well, the dollars that you see right there are really reduction to our summer school budget because we really geared up last year. And the cost of that was split between two fiscal years, 13-14 and 14-15. So the cost is included there. The reason the FTS are reducing, we actually had higher than 9387. I think we were budgeted there. But we're shooting to earn 9,200 this year because we will only have one summer that we're counting.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was,
Okay.
that's the roundabout question.
So if you take those large increased costs, and now they're embedded into those various rows of expenditures, we would be in a deficit position if we had no new funds from the state. I put zero and I refer to it as access or COLA, whatever form it may come in. But if we had no new dollars, it would be very tricky to absorb those costs in the next year. What I did then is assume, what if we got 2%? It's just a ballpark. When you look, as a K-12 administrator, I used to look at the school services dartboard. They don't use that as much for community colleges, but it's the only real direction given out there from folks that really study the state budget and all the projections. And they're at about a 2.2% for 15-16 and a 2.4% for 16-17. So assuming a 2%, we would actually be in a positive position both in 15-16 and 16-17, which is really good news. These are not perfect, they're just big, broad strokes. Something that I'll mention is if the bond goes up, that 300,000 surplus might need to go direct to more faculty if that's part of what we're dealing with. So that's our fiscal solvency. FTES, just to let you know, someday I'm going to have to drop off earlier years. This is going to get too full. But our 13-14 actual was 94.78 is where we finished the year. The funded, and this is bouncing around, but it's a little lower than what you saw last time, 86.96, and that will again change as the state does their annual calculation. So I wrote that, I italicized that. 14-15, 9,200 is what we're shooting for. And last tentative, you saw a funding of 9,023, and that dropped to 89.95 because of the nuances of the state calculation. They increased the amount per student a bit, but lowered the funded FTES. So we didn't come out too different. It was only $37,000 less. So we're still funded for less than we're earning, at least at this point in time. This is categoricals, just if you're interested in knowing. The ones that have changed since tentative is that student success. We had 548,000 just based on prior year. Now we're showing almost 1.1 million. The scheduled maintenance, which is a combination of the live oak, 635 plus the additional dollars, and instructional equipment of 276,000 there. And then we also have farm budgets. I'm not going to go over each of these, but I did want to show you that the total farm unit is just only showing a $34,000 profit there. We have our crops and I think alfalfa that turns around and then attempts to help our other divisions. But I also need to zero in a little bit on how we truly came out in 13-14 and maybe report that back to you. So it's a pretty tight budget there. And then we have other funds, which are our other funds. These are not fund balances, but just the revenues and expenditures that are budgeted. Those are also in the budget book. And if this will move. I don't know if there's any questions there, but I think that wraps it up for our final budget.
I like it.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions on
You
budget?
get all that numbers there.
Fidel,
There are,
question.
there are Fidel.
I'm not sure if this is a great question to ask Christine or maybe somebody else can answer. But if we've lost English teachers towards the end, like towards the beginning of the semester, you have quite a few of them, why is it that we only hired temporary full-time instead of actually hiring them full-time?
So actually what happened is right before, the week before school started, Fresno City College hired several full-time temporary faculty, and two of our faculty in English and one in science got those jobs. So in the majority of the classes, we were able to replace them by part-time faculty. So we hired in the last week probably 8 new, well probably more in English, math, and science the week before school started. In the case of several English classes, we couldn't find additional full-time, adjunct faculty. So we took 2 of our current adjunct faculty and increased them to full-time just for the fall semester. So they're teaching a full load just for the fall. Does that help?
Yes, it
Answer?
does. Yes, yes, it does.
Do we have any other budget questions or comments?
You do a good job of explaining it.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Not moved.
Been moved by Mr. Sherman. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Nunes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approved. Thank you, Christine. Item number 15, approval of our agreement for the architectural design services for the renovation of the Live Oak building.
Okay, we did bring this to you in August, and as you recall, it was tabled with the suggestion that we request a fixed fee with Darden Architects, who have come out as the top architect from our RFP process. And so we're hoping that this is fairly simple. It's the same agreement, but just some slightly different verbiage added to page 14. And basically they said they'll provide normal architectural and engineering services necessary to accomplish the work described for the lump sum fee not to exceed $95,780, which is 10% of our scope of work. They did say changes in scope may require a contract adjustment. They're very open to, they don't foresee that at all. But if we as a district came in and said, you know, we no longer want those circular walls, or we want straight walls, and we want 2 doors, or we want to change a bathroom, then that may require an additional cost. We're hoping you're comfortable with that. There's fees attached at the back, and there's also a rate cost. And if you were ready to do so, we would request that you approve the agreement with Darden for this project. I'll mention a couple things real quick. Our Dean of Facilities is out. He had a knee replacement, so that's why I'm presenting as well. And something else, just last week, the state came with something new that they haven't done before, and they said the scheduled maintenance of which we've set aside $635,000. Usually you can always carry it over to the next year. They said it needed to be expended in this year. That's not going to happen in a perfect world, but they said if you can at least have a contract in place, they'll count that. So we're actually moving up the schedule a bit to have our design work done by December, but trying to get it to DSA and back in spring and go out to bid.
So they're going to fund $675,000 of the remodel? Is that it?
It was about $635,000.
John?
Like you said, lump sum, not to exceed, those two terms are mutually exclusive to me. Can you explain what you mean by that?
I think they mean a single sum that will not exceed
But if it
95,000.
doesn't exceed, that means there's some other way of earning it to get that, so that doesn't make sense.
My hope is that if the actual bid for work comes in much less or does not include the contingency, it might be less, but in reality, I might need Eric to
Well, then this isn't lump
verify.
sum. If you're doing that.
Do you think of a single sum with a lump sum? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah, I see exactly what you're saying.
What does it say in the contract?
Page 14 it should replicate what was written on the board agenda item. So it's right in the middle under basic services. Will provide normal architectural and engineering services necessary to accomplish the work described for the lump sum fee not to exceed $95,780. I see what you're saying.
Good luck with that.
So that's still a 10% fee then? Not to exceed.
The way I read it is that they will not exceed $95,780, but if it comes in, but you're correct.
Yeah, it's
It
still a
would have been
10%
better
fee.
to clarify.
Not to exceed the 10% fee.
Yeah, but then it's not a lump sum, you know, and so what you've done, what we had before is they got a percentage wherever it was. And now if you change this, if you make it not to exceed, well, then you just cut them off on the top. Well, I can't imagine anybody saying that. You know, if we're gonna limit how much we're gonna pay them, well, you know, it should cut both ways.
There's a couple ways we could go with this. I was not involved with the discussion with them, and Eric was, so I apologize. When you look at the fees in the back, if they come in lower for some reason, or if the contingency is not needed.
We're right back where we started. You know, one of the problems with percentage, okay. If our architect does such a good job and he puts in extra hours to make sure it works, if they bid lower, it costs him money, so why would he do it? And that's the advantage of lump sum is you're paying for, he's not costing himself money for doing a better job. Well, as soon as you go back to reserve the right to take part of his fee away, if they don't, if the prices are lower, now you defeat yourself again. Follow?
I think I do, John. So what we were trying to do was have it not exceed the 10% by requesting a fixed fee. But the term lump sum muddies that a little bit. If it were a single sum not to exceed.
No, not to exceed, word to the problem.
Well,
So-
The lump sum is not a problem.
this is
No,
a minimum.
then I'm confused, because I think not to exceed means no more than, and then the price would be whatever it was, anything actually less than that.
No, the way I read this is our fee is not going to be less than 95,000. It's not going to be less or it's not going to be more. It's going to be 95,000. Is that the way you see it?
Well, the way it's worded is really, I think it's just something to fight over later. And,
So help me understand again, John, what you're.
well, I thought, and I'm guilty for listening to reading, I thought that you guys estimated the cost of construction to be whatever it is. Eric was happy with that. And then, so it's okay, we'll take 10% of that number, and that's your fee. Whatever, however it goes, that's your fee.
Right.
Well, now, what you've done here instead is have some qualifier in here, so you have some way of paying him less.
So if it said lump sum of 95,780, you'd be good with that?
Well, if he agreed to this, I guess I
Yes.
would have argued, but I'm shocked that he agreed to it.
Yeah.
So we got a cap on it, but it could go lower.
Well, that's how we're reading it, and I thought you were concerned that it was gonna go the other way. So you're actually thinking about, he may have disadvantaged himself.
And if you guys negotiated that, and he said, okay, who am I to argue? So, but it's just not a mistake, he agreed to this.
As far as I know, this is the exact wording that they sent to us.
I don't read that the way you read it. I don't think it can be less than 95,780.
Well, but not to exceed.
It's not gonna go higher, but it's not gonna go lower.
They're not.
That is the
Right.
fee.
So I think the
That
debate
is,
would end.
that is the
The
fee.
debate would be.
You're going to get that no matter what.
Exactly.
That's what it should be.
And it's fixed, right.
It's a fixed fee.
And what we talked about last time is we didn't want to just say 10% of the total cost, because that could be any number based on the total cost.
Okay, well, I think it's okay, although the word is
Okay.
Okay, I think we're good. Are we good with that? Can I get a motion to approve?
Don't do the motion?
Can we get a motion?
I move that we authorize this agreement as presented.
Okay, you sound real confident there, Ken, but.
For a lump sum fixed fee not to exceed 95.
There's more to the agreement than that. You're authorizing this agreement between the owner and the architect.
I second. Whatever your motion was.
Seconded by Mr. Mann. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved, thank you. Last item of the meeting is item 16, which is our activity fee increase. Mr. Calvis.
Adele, you want to present this one? Or you just want to vote on it? I get to present on the activity benefits fee increase. The Student Senate received the financial support to promote campus events and teams that compete on behalf of the college. They receive that funding not from our district funds, but from a student activity fee. That fee is currently $7.50 per semester and has not changed since sometime in the 80s, we're told. Obviously, costs have gone up since then. We've also increased the number of groups requiring co-curricular funds, and they do a lot more than they've ever done. We've been talking about raising this fee for, well, several years, dating back to when I was athletic director. And it took Fidel and the good folks on the Student Senate to get something done. This summer, at their retreat, they discussed the need to increase this fee from $7.50 to $15 per semester, and took it back to the overall Senate at their first or second meeting, and they've approved. And on their behalf, they've approved going from $7.50 to $15 a semester. Again, that fee helps to fund co-curricular funding, assist with clubs promoting campus-wide events and activities, scholarship awards, financial support for cultural education, fine arts gallery, and other activities coordinated by the district. And the benefits are available to all students who are paying that activity benefits fee. So, unless you have any other questions, it's our recommendation to second what the Student Senate has already voted to do, and that is increase from $7.50 to $15 a semester.
What does that do to their budgets? There we go. Dale's-
Oh, no, I just wanted to comment on that. I mean, everything Brett said, I was pretty much going to reiterate. It hasn't been changed, it hasn't been increased since the early 80s, actually. And we're hoping, to implement this in the coming semester, because now that we are the only, we're the only group funding co-curricular from that, and I think it's really important to, of course, recruiters or competitive events. But it's not just, when you think, we're increasing the budget, we're increasing the fee by half of it. If you look at other community colleges, in which a few of me and Abby Gregory, which was the president of the students, actually did, their activities fee is actually anywhere from $20 to $45 still at this moment. So we figured, increasing it by half, it's still reasonable, especially since it hasn't been increased for actually X amount of years. But it's not just about the co-curriculars as well. It's also bringing certain events to the campus. From personal experiences, I started off going to Portable College at first, Over there, it's not talking bad about the portable colleges at all. I mean, necessary. They don't seem to have the type of events that we have here, and I feel like that's important to the incoming students, so they feel more involved, so they know that it's more out there. And I feel, without increasing this cost right here, we can't bring that to the students.
I think, Lori, your question was, did we do any rough numbers to know what the increase in fees would generate? Does it take their budget from 10,000 to 20,000, and what do we know what that amount is?
Yeah, it essentially doubles it.
Well, we know that.
Yeah.
Is there a
Now,
number?
we can figure that out, I think.
Well, it's 10,000 students per semester.
And they all are required to pay, or is it optional?
They can opt out, and we normally have maybe a 3%
Small
opt-out
opt-out
rate.
rate.
Okay,
But,
so that's
you
a
know,
big chunk of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Total.
substantial.
Yeah, so on the whole opting out, the students do have the first 2 weeks of the semester to opt out and get the $15. And of course the students that get charged is as long as they have 6 units or more. If they have 6 units or less, they're still able to pay for the activities fee if they're willing to. But for students with 6 units or more, they have to pay unless they're willing to opt out the first 2 weeks of the semester.
So it's like 15 to 30,000.
Yep.
Does it come in a lump sum? Oh, no.
Did
Not to exceed 10.
Does that mean students opt out?
If students are wanting the $15 back within the first 2 weeks, they can opt yes.
Yeah, I said, how many of them are opting out?
Well, that's
About 3% of our students. We have,
3%.
give or take, 10,500 students, and I think we end up having maybe 400 opt-out or something.
Somebody just say that.
It's good for all of us.
John's making so much noise there.
How many, Brent, how many students opt out?
Is it going up by 50% or 100? No, I'm just teasing. Okay, we want to cast our, what do you call it?
This is your advisory vote.
Wait, we got a motion first.
Yes.
Oh, that's right, we get to, okay. So I've never done an advisory vote, I don't know what the system was.
It's just asking for his
All right,
advisory
do
vote.
I have a motion to approve the fee increase, first of all? Oh, are you done?
You can make a motion.
Yeah.
You can make
Can I
a motion.
entertain the motion to increase the activity benefit fee from $7.50 to $15?
You bet, it's been moved by Fidel, seconded by Mr. Sumo. Any more discussion? Okay, so now we cast
So
an
now
advisory vote?
we can ask our student representative to cast your advisory vote.
Yes or no?
All in
yes.
favor?
All okay. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
You get to say it.
Oh, all in favor?
No, she
Oh,
says.
All in favor?
There you go.
Motion passes.
I'm positive I don't want no.
We'll need a script for this, everybody's confused. So motion passes, correct?
Did you get everybody else's
Oh,
vote?
no, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passes.
No.
Any no's? No no's, no, well, I heard everybody say yes, but.
I want some questions. This is just for my own information. What is our bus fee now per semester per student?
The bus fee just went up to $10 for a full-time student, went up to $10 per semester per student. For part-timers, it went up to $9 per semester per student. And in return, they get a benefit, those that choose to use public transportation get a benefit of about $200 per semester. Because the Go Anywhere pass within the regional bus systems is about $50 per month. So for $10, you get a $200 benefit.
Okay, what is our parking fee now?
25.
$25 per semester.
25. And what is our per unit cost per student?
$46 per unit.
46.
$46 per unit, of which about maybe a third of our students actually pay, as opposed to getting a Board of Governors waiver.
I've had some ladies contact me about the parking lot over here, and they're concerned that, they said that the first 2 weeks or so is parking is free everywhere, is that correct?
We have a grace period so that students can get their passes, make sure that they have them on the windows, get them on the right cars, and then we have an effective date.
Okay, and their concern is that once that's not free, that lot will not be used. And they're concerned that we spend over, you know, our major I money to buy all those houses, do the lots, and they think that those lots will sit there vacant.
The ones on the south end? Well, I think depending on the day of the week and when classes are scheduled, like we were talking this morning, Greg, they're full, but it's cyclical and goes along with the schedule and the classes.
Right.
So there are times when you can drive by and they'll be less full, but there's times when you can drive by and they're almost
So the
completely
students are using the parking lot?
Yes.
And the other thing is, as we get closer to like the drop date, the final drop date, you see, you know, students drop classes, so you'll see less cars in the parking lot as the semester, you know, moves on, but.
I think their concern was that they live in the neighborhood, is that
parking
once
in the
it's not
neighborhood
free, then they're gonna be in their neighborhood.
Yeah, Greg,
Oh,
we
no.
took care of that, if you recall.
Yeah, you told me that.
Well, 3 years ago, when you were president, we went to the city and we got all 4 of those cul-de-sacs off of Woodland restricted to just resident parking. And so that pushed those students
Yeah.
into that parking
Yeah,
lot.
I think that one of the ladies that was concerned is her cul-de-sac voted not to do that.
Oh, that was the one that voted not to. They had the opportunity. They had the opportunity to
Ever
do
go
it.
to her HOA then, huh?
We're going on that HOA.
I know.
And you know, one other thing though, if you're sitting out here when that bus gets to the Chevron station, there's a stop in front of that Chevron station. If you're sitting out front, the number of students crossing the street from that bus stop there,
Yeah.
it's amazing how many of our students actually
It's
take the
kidding
bus.
out the door.
It's
There for a
huge.
moment. There's all sorts
Well,
of
plus,
stuff.
bunch of them are parking over here in the free parking lot too.
Right.
Right.
Any further discussion items, comments, questions? Thank you all.